Just to recap from the game, certainly the first thing that stood out, a great crowd, great atmosphere, loud, just exactly what you expect at Tiger Stadium. So certainly appreciate our fans showing up and creating such a great home field advantage for us. We really appreciate that and look forward to seeing that again back in when we get back in October. A battle for the boot, a rivalry game, Arkansas. I was really impressed after watching the film. They played very well-coached football team on all sides. Their offensive game plan was outstanding. Defensively, did some really good things. And we had to overcome. We got off to a slow start offensively, but our defense, didn't. They actually got off to a really good start and kind of gave us a chance to kind of settle in offensively. And, once we're able to do that, got it moving. I thought what stood out was our perseverance. We get down 14-3 with like 48 seconds to go in the half, and that was a huge touchdown for Arkansas. But our offense moves the ball down the field with 48 seconds on the clock and scores. And that was a big touchdown. We come out in the second half, score again, and turn the momentum around. And certainly, Arkansas answered, and we answered back twice when they tied the score. But I think what was really big in that game, and sometimes you look at it, differently after the game, and when you get a chance to watch the film. But after we gave up the fake field goal, the way our defense dug in and refused to give up a touchdown in that situation was huge. That can be overlooked in many instances, but the resolve of our defense to dig down and hold them to 3 after giving up a fake field goal, which, as you know, emotionally can take the wind right out of you. Our guys hung in there, battled, and only gave up the field goal and forced them to use 2 timeouts, because that comes back later when they don't have any timeouts, where we can control the clock later in the game. So very pivotal situation in the game where our defense was really resilient. Now, there was some self-inflicted wounds that we're going to have to clean up, but all in all, Daniels again, Neighbors, the running game was really solid. Really liked what we saw there. Thomas, there were playmakers out there on the offensive side of the ball. We come up with a big sudden change turnover. So a lot of good things there to get that win. And again, things to build off of going into this week against, Ole Miss, who.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Chase with Jace. Glad that you're able to come aboard with us and catch up and talk about some LSU football going on, as LSU starts off the season in their SEC slate at 2-0 in the SEC and 3-1 in conference. So big win the other week against Arkansas for the battle for the Golden Boot. Rivalry trophy to get that win was big. You just heard Brian Kelly talk about a thrilling win against a very tough and pesky Arkansas Razorback football team. So, I'm never going to pick LSU big again against Arkansas after last week. If you go and looked at the preview on our website, I had LSU winning big. I thought they were the better team on paper, but that's why you don't play the game on paper, right? You got to play it on the football field, and Arkansas really gave LSU their best punch. Really, this is a weird time that we had this Arkansas game. Usually when you look at LSU and Arkansas in this rivalry the last couple of years, it's always been played at the end of the year. But this year, it's played really early in the year. Usually, you look back at it, LSU and Arkansas, they played after the Bama game. So a lot of times LSU was up I mean, actually, Arkansas was up for the LSU after that game, and LSU, after really putting all their efforts into really the LSU, I mean, the Alabama game, is just really a natural letdown for them a lot of times. But it doesn't matter if you put it at the end of the schedule or at the beginning of the schedule. That is a tough game to win because you know Arkansas is always going to give LSU their best shot. For last years, the game has been decided by 3 points. So it shows you what kind of rivalry this is and how tough it is to win and beat an Arkansas Razorback football team. And they're coming off a loss. They're coming off a loss against BYU, so they're very motivated. They played really well on the road against LSU. LSU was 17.5-point favorites. They obviously did not cover, but they got the win. That's what matters at the end. 34-31 is the final score. I'm going to show you some of the pictures that our amazing Billy Metcalf took during the game. We'll make sure you try to get a lot of these photos up on their website pretty soon. But you can go to our website, gridironfootballusa.com. You see a lot of these photos that Billy took in our LSU Arkansas coverage. We have our post-game recap, and then my 5 takeaways from the LSU's win against Arkansas. So let's talk about that game a little bit. Jayden Daniels, another great performance. He actually finished as the SEC Co-Offensive Player of the Week with his performance. Was 20 of 29 for 320 yards and 4 touchdowns is when he ended up for that game. And it's crazy to say, even though he was the Co-SEC Offensive Player of the Week for the second straight time, it was a little bit of a struggle early on. It wasn't the efficient, fast start that we saw Jayden Daniels last week against Mississippi State. It took a little bit of a process, a little bit of a slow start for Jayden Daniels, especially in that first half. I mean, for majority of that first half, it wasn't pretty. And LSU really overall got off to kind of a sluggish start in that first half. If you kind of just avoid what happened in the second half and talk about that and how explosive that offense really was in the second half. The first half, it was tough sledding. I mean, it was 13-3 early on in that game against Arkansas. LSU was trailing, and for a little bit, you can hear a couple of boos every now and then with Jayden Daniels early on. But what I love about Jayden Daniels, and he's really continuing to show this throughout his career here at LSU, is his ability to persevere and just move on to the next play. Shortly after that, that's when he hit the bomb, the 49-yard touchdown pass to Brian Thomas, and that really sparked not only the LSU offense, but it sparked the entire team. Because if you can recall, right after that touchdown pass, that was when Harold Perkins hit KJ Jefferson in the backfield at the end of the first half. So you know the momentum was going towards LSU's way as they went to the locker room. It was a 13-10 ball game in the first half. Second half, it was a defensive game in the first half, came an offensive shootout in the second half. So Jayden Daniels pretty much carried that big play to Brian Thomas right before halftime, carried in the first drive of the second half, threw another 49-yard touchdown pass to Thomas, and this time Thomas had to bail out his quarterback just a little bit. It was a little bit underthrown by Jayden Daniels, but a great adjustment by Brian Thomas and coming back and catching the football and then turning it into 6 points. But still, overall, I mean, Jayden was in command. I mean, ever since that touchdown pass at the end of the first half, that really sparked that offense. You look at it, they scored on every possession since then. So when this LSU offense is clicking, you can see how dangerous this offense really is and what they can get going. So Jayden finished the game 20 of 29, 320 yards and 4 touchdowns. And that's despite not a great first half. So it shows you how much he really dominated in the second half. Brian Kelly talked about how great Jayden Daniels was, and he even said, I believe after the game, that as far as the second half is concerned, that's some of the best football Jayden Daniels has ever played at LSU. So Jayden Daniels, he's coming together, and he's really, the numbers so far, it's been pretty spectacular what Jayden Daniels has done this year. And you can say all you want about, he's obviously not going to be where Joe Burrow was. I mean, that's just pretty much a different stratosphere in what we're trying to compare numbers-wise. But Jaden Daniels, he is having himself one of the best seasons in LSU football history right now. He's on pace for that. So far, he's completed 72% of his passes for pretty much 1,300 yards. He's averaging over 10 yards per attempt. Has thrown for 12 touchdowns, his most in 1 year was 17. He could pretty much match that or eclipse that probably this week against Ole Miss. He's been so good. 12 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. Back-to-back SEC Co-Offensive Player of the Week award winners. Jaden Daniels has been thriving right now in this LSU's offense, and once he puts it together, I mean, for one game, we saw what he can do against Mississippi State when he puts everything together. When he does, it's going to be very dangerous when he puts 4 quarters together. Talk about dangerous. Let's talk about the wide receiver duo of Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, what can you say about him? We all know about Malik Neighbors. He's LSU's number 1. He's proven that. He proved that last year. He was Jaden Daniels' top target last year. And the main question was, heading into the season, who is going to emerge to be that number 2? And we've seen that before in the past. Who is going to be that number 2 receiver behind Malik Neighbors? And everybody's starting to shift their focus and attention towards Malik Neighbors, and why not? I mean, after the game he had against Mississippi State, you're not going to let him beat you, so somebody else has to emerge, and that person was Brian Thomas Jr. Both players were outstanding, so we got a freak athlete like Brian Thomas Jr., what he's able to do, over 130 yards, 2 touchdowns, was pretty much the MVP of the game, if you ask Brian Kelly, because he pretty much jump-started LSU to what they were able to get in the second half. 133 yards, 2 touchdowns for Brian Thomas on 5 catches. Malik Neighbors had 130 yards and 2 touchdowns himself on 8 catches as well. So over 200 yards, 4 touchdowns between the two of them. You can see why this duo is emerging as one of the top duos in the country at the wide receiver position. So offense was very good. Defense, on the other hand, if you look on the other side of the football, it was not the best effort that we've seen, or best execution, I would say, by the other side of the football. Now, one of my big keys, and I asked Brian Kelly about this last week, was getting KJ Jefferson on the ground and how you're able to do that, how you're able to contain him. The LSU pass rush was very good against KJ Jefferson, not KJ Jefferson, but Will Rogers the week before. And they're able to put a lot of pressure on Rogers, make him very ineffective. You can tell he looked a little bit lost out there. But Brian Kelly stated that they played a lot of mobile quarterbacks in the first couple weeks. With Jordan Travis, Grambling had a very mobile quarterback, and then they had to play Will Rogers, who's not as swift of foot as the other quarterbacks they played, including KJ Jefferson. So, how is that going to translate into playing KJ Jefferson? They're able to bring him down a couple of times, 4 sacks on the night, including 2 back-to-back sacks, which is one of the best defensive sequences we've seen from LSU this year. Because I believe Mekhi Wingo and Whit Weeks had a sack on one play, and then the very next play we saw Deshaun Womack get a sack as well without his helmet on, too. And that helped LSU's defense get a stop, and that was pretty hard to do that night. And there was something good about LSU's defense. They play bend but don't break a lot of times. I mean, Arkansas did go up and down the field, but 3 times, and really if you go back and look at giving up 3s and not 7s, that really made a difference. LSU won the game by a field goal. So LSU's defense was able to step up in the red zone. I believe they forced 3 Arkansas field goals in that game, so that really helped too. So that really helped as well. But besides that, it was tough going. I mean, the pass rush was there, but a lot of times they weren't able to bring KJ Jefferson down. 3rd down was a problem. I believe Arkansas converted with 9 of 14, I believe, on 3rd downs. So that was pretty tough too. And on the money down, they were excellent against LSU, and that's really played them on the money down. That's one of my takeaways with LSU's third down defense has to get better. They have to get off the field, but because that's been a problem not only against Arkansas, but that was a problem in the loss against Florida State about not being able to get off the field when it matters most. And then there was the coverage bust. It was Luke Haas. Luke Haas was a freshman tight end for Arkansas. He got open multiple times, and Brian Kelly talked about. We'll play some of the Brian Kelly audio clips for y'all from the press conference, but just too many guys that are trying to do other people's jobs. And Brian Kelly said this pretty much over and over again, and he said going back to the Florida State game, it's really the defenders trying to put too much pressure on themselves, do other people's jobs, when really they should be doing their own job. So that was really the main concern Brian Kelly had with this defense and some of the blown coverages. So you go back and look, when KJ Jefferson rolled to the right and threw that touchdown pass down the field, that was a busted coverage because the cornerback, I believe it was Zy Alexander, he saw KJ Jefferson thinking he was going to run and trying to help out and making a tackle, helping the run game, but he stayed off his guy and allowed KJ Jefferson to find the wide open receiver. So it's just communication. The other one where Haas was open, it was I believe he said it was the linebacker not doing his assignment there and passing off the tight end in zone, I believe. So yeah, just a lot of miscommunication, a lot of wrinkles like that. That really hurt LSU in terms of blowing a lot of coverages throughout the game. So that's obviously an issue that needs to get worked out. But you didn't see it was different. It felt a little different in the Florida State game. Because I feel like LSU's pass rush is coming along. They're getting some new guys in. Deshaun Womack was involved on the edge. You're seeing Whit Weeks as a linebacker. You're seeing more and more guys in the front seven. I still think that could be a strength. This has to be the strength of the LSU defense moving forward. But it wasn't like DBs getting mossed, like you saw when Keon Coleman was pretty much mossing all the LSU DBs. It's just a lot of guys running open, a lot of missed coverages, a lot of blown assignments. So those are things that you can work on to get better. So that's a good thing about this, is those are things you can work towards and improve and get better throughout the season. So I'm sure this is something that's because the secondary is kind of like the offensive line. You need a lot of communication. It's a group effort, so there needs to be a lot of communication on the back end in order to get a pretty good product on the defensive side of the football. But LSU was able to hold on. It was a back-and-forth battle between Jefferson and Daniels. I thought that coming to the season that Daniels and Jefferson are the two best quarterbacks in the SEC. And that type of performance kind of backed up my word right there about how good both these two quarterbacks are. I was always really high on KJ Jefferson, and he pretty much impressed me and then didn't prove me wrong right there. And then Jayden Daniels is just getting better and better through each game. So if you like quarterback play, that was a really good game to watch. And it came down to whoever got the football last. So what really played Arkansas was the home crowd advantage. And that is when you're playing against LSU, it's not 11-11 in Tiger Stadium. It's 12-11 because you're going to have to deal with the 12th man that is the crowd. As far as making an impact, this is my second year covering LSU football, but as far as a home crowd having an effect on a game and making an impact and why LSU won a game, I think this was the best example. Arkansas had a lot of false start penalties, some delay of games in the game. Arkansas penalties have been a problem for them. They had 14 penalties the week before against BYU. They had 11 penalties, I believe, overall, looking at the final numbers, against LSU. And a lot of times, even they were called with delay of game or a false start. Arkansas had to burn 3 second-half timeouts in the second half, and that really made a difference because when you're talking about rivalry games, you're talking about close games in the SEC that's going to come down probably the last couple minutes, you need those timeouts. And so when Arkansas scored to tie the football game up at 31, LSU, Brian Kelly, Jayden Daniels, Mike Denbrock, they were saying, let's not rush this, right? Let's run our 4-minute offense. There's 5 minutes left. We can pretty much run the whole clock down because Arkansas burned all their timeouts, and that's what LSU did. That was a very clutch drive by Jaden Daniels. The running game came alive with Logan Diggs at the very end on that drive. It was good to see. In a high pressure situation, what LSU can do. I thought Jaden Daniels was great at that last year. Coming back in the Florida State game, leading the team 99 yards to give his team at least an opportunity to tie the football game in the opening game of the season last year. And then you fast forward to this year, in the last year as well, the Alabama game. He was clutch down the stretch in that Alabama game for LSU to get the win over the Crimson Tide. So Jaden Daniels not a lot of people give him credit for it, but he's a clutch quarterback, and he played clutch down the stretch. Damian Ramos got the last-second field goal to put LSU ahead 34-31. Then KJ Jefferson had one more opportunity, had one play, and that pass was intercepted by Zy Alexander. LSU got a hard-fought victory, 34-31. You're trying to figure out, okay, can LSU kind of build on that momentum from the Mississippi State game, especially on the defensive side? It was a step back for LSU's defense, but offensively, despite a slow first half, we saw that offense and why it is the best offense right now in the SEC. So that was my thoughts on the LSU-Arkansas game. For more of that, you can go to our website at gridironfootballusa.com. So you can go check out those takeaways as well on that website. So before I get to y'all questions and then y'all statements as well, I'm going to play y'all some couple of clips and then I'll get to y'all questions. I appreciate y'all asking questions here. We got a couple of them to go to, like 3 or 4 right now. So we appreciate it. That's what we love to see. We want y'all, the fans, to be involved. So if you have a question for me, or just a statement, just an observation about the game, or just an observation about the team, please feel free to comment in the comment section. We love for y'all to get involved. We'll get to your questions, and we'll get to your statements, and we'll make sure to give them a plug on the show. So if you have anything for me, feel free to comment. I'll take all questions and statements at the end of the show. So we're going to get to a couple Brian Kelly tidbits here. First of them is on Brian Thomas. So Brian Thomas, we talked about what kind of game he had against Arkansas. He just went off. 2 touchdowns, over 130 yards receiving. He was a beast, and every time he had one-on-one coverage, Jaden Daniels, he trusted him and he made plays. So I'm going to get to this as well on our website, gridironfootballusa.com. May do a story about how this big three of Daniels, Neighbors, and Thomas are giving LSU a much improvement on that side as far as being aggressive and throwing the football down the football field. So this is what Brian Kelly had to say about the emergence and the improvements of Brian Thomas, possibly being wide receiver number 2 behind Malik Neighbors.
In the preseason, but just can you talk about more about Brian Thomas's, just the way he's evolved? Obviously a big game for him, but he's been kind of quietly putting together solid performances. What does that do for your offense, and what kind of challenge is that for now an opposing defense? Neighbors on one side, Thomas on the other.
Well, as you know, Neighbors is getting a lot of attention. You know, if they're playing man coverage, that safety is definitely tilted towards Neighbors, as you can imagine. And in some instances, he's getting bracket coverage, which means, you know, they're playing a zone to one side with him and then man on the other side. And so you've got to be able to find other matchups. It's almost a sense where they're trying to take him out of the game. You've got to find the other one-on-one matchups. And so, you know, BT gets some one-on-one matchups that are favorable, and Jaden's seeing that, and we're taking advantage of it. And Brian's, you know, obviously very capable to win in those one-on-one matchups.
So that was Brian Kelly on Brian Thomas. I mean, what a day for the Walker native, and it was such a clutch performance because at the time, if you can recall, things weren't not going great for LSU. It was 13-3. The crowd was pretty much dead, pretty much out of it. And for him to have that explosive play, that deep touchdown right before half, there wasn't much time left, about 30, 40 seconds left to go into the end of the first half. And for him to make that play and get LSU kickstart back and then him getting another touchdown to put LSU back out in front, that was big. He had himself a great performance, and we all know about Malik Neighbors. See somebody else trying to get that pressure off Malik, and you can't double cover both of them. That just comes to show you that. So next up, one of the guys that has flashed is Deshaun Womack. And we've seen freshmen flash before under Brian Kelly. You look at last year, I can rattle all the names. The biggest headline was the 2 tackles starting as freshmen. Mason Taylor at tight end, Harold Perkins, obviously, on the defensive side of the football. We've seen a little bit of that this year when you're talking about Caleb Jackson splashing a little bit at the running back position. Whit Weeks, he has just been a beast ever since the injury to Omar Spades. He's been taking advantage of that opportunity. And now Deshaun Womack is starting to make some splash, making some noise. Had a big sack against KJ Jefferson. He only had about 4 or 5 snaps, and so actually Grant Shasher, he actually got a chance. He actually stole that question from me, so I'll give a shout out to Grant for asking this question to Brian Kelly about Deshaun Womack, and with his ability to come off the edge and be an impact player because of a freak athlete that he is he going to have a more of an expanded role with LSU on the defensive end spot? So Brian Kelly, he obviously loves the potential with Deshaun Womack, but like he mentioned with some of the other freshmen this year, there's still some room to grow.
This season, Deshaun Womack has made an impact coming off the edge. How has he grown as a player, and how will his role expand moving forward?
He's young. He's learning. He couldn't even keep his helmet on when he was out on the field, so we got to teach him how to buckle his chin strap and do all that kind of stuff. So, look, I mean, it's a process. I know everybody wants to make a superstar of all these guys in the first time. He's going to be a really good player, and I don't want to take anything away from the young man, but there's a process that he's got to continue to do the little things the right way, and he's making progress. And as you see, we're getting him on the field in our dime package and our nickel package because he can rush the passer, and I'm pretty confident you're going to see more of him, but let's just tap the brakes here a little bit. He's not ready for a starting position, but he's going to definitely help our defense.
So that was Brian Kelly and Deshaun Womack. Pretty much he said it, but basically he's got a lot more room to grow. I mean, for him to really get a starting role in this team. Now he's definitely going to get involved. We've seen great athletes in the past. We even saw it with like B.J. Ojolari his freshman year. We saw it with Harold Perkins his freshman year. You have such great defensive players, like freshmen. They're just great athletes. Let them go out there and be athletes. And so this may be a similar situation with Deshaun Womack. I mean, at defensive end, Brian Kelly talked about putting him in their nickel and their dime packages when he's out there, so he can just go out there and rush the passer. And you saw what he's capable of. I mean, this guy's a 5-star from Baltimore, and I love the joke that Brian Kelly said about keeping his helmet on, keeping it strapped. That was pretty funny to hear that. But yeah, he's got a lot of potential, but there's so much talent on the defensive front, and we're going to get back to that because I know that's going to be one of y'all questions and statements about the defensive line. But really, I mean, this has a lot of potential to still be one of the best in the SEC with the depth and the talent that they have. And Deshaun Womack, even though it might not be as much of an expanded role as maybe we saw from Harold Perkins last year, he's definitely going to have a role on this defense, that's for sure. Another defensive player I want to give a shout-out to is this was actually my question, too. I thought the defensive star for LSU in the first half was Andre Sam. Andre Sam was out there everywhere making plays. He was all over the field making tackles, had the interception as well that was really on back-to-back interceptions. Jaden Daniels was coming off an interception, actually threw it to a former LSU DB, Dwight McGlothern, and then actually KJ Jefferson repaid the favor, threw it to Andre Sam. I thought Andre Sam played phenomenal. Was definitely a big gem, a bright gem, and not really a great position group from last week. But I thought Andre Sam played pretty well, and so I asked Brian Kelly about Andre Sam and what he thought about his play so far throughout the early part of the SEC schedule.
over here. Andre Sam in the back end, secondary for y'all, had an interception for y'all this past Saturday. He's been very aggressive, making tackles, been kind of all over the place over the field. But what's basically your just input on what you've seen from Andre Sam?
Yeah, he's made progress. I'll give you an example. The interception he made, he would not have made that interception earlier in the year, especially against Florida State. He wasn't playing the post deep enough. He's getting great depth on the post now, so he can break up on the over route. We were a little bit short in depth in that deep post position. So he's done a really good job there. He's got to continue to make those open field tackles. So that'll be an area that we'll concentrate with him on. But he's so coachable and plays with great energy, great enthusiasm. Love to coach him every day, and he just wants to get better. That's all right. That's a guy that you want to coach.
Brian Kelly said that. Love to give Andre Sam his kudos. He's done an excellent job, and he's been a really good player for him in the back end. Still, Coach Kelly wants him to improve and get better and see more from him. But it's great to see Andre Sam out there making tackles and flying over the football field. I remember calling a game against McNeese when I was at Southeastern, called a game on ESPN, and he was a guy that flashed. I mean, just stood out. He was really McNeese State's best player, and that was going against a really good Southeastern offense led by Cole Kelly and company. And he's fitting in pretty good as a safety, especially his really ball skills have been really good, and his ability to cover a lot of ground quickly has really stood out too. And then finally, I'm going to address this too because this was definitely a big headline, I guess we'd have to say, a big talking point after the game, was how LSU handled that situation. If you remember at the very end of the game, right before the Damian Ramos field goal. So if y'all can recall, it was like under a minute pretty much left. LSU had all three of their timeouts. They pretty much ran one play, and then they burned all the play clock down, then called timeout, did the same thing on second down, did the same thing on third down. I mean, yeah, that's what it was. They did the same thing 3 plays in a row leading up to third down. So when they had that third down and goal call, they had no timeouts left. And it was pretty much about 8 or 9 seconds left to go in the game, or it was like around the teens, like 10, 15 seconds left. But you're in a situation there, they burned their last timeout, they have third and goal, but you have to get your special teams right. LSU did, but they're going to go for a touchdown, and they actually threw in the back of the end zone. Jaden Daniels took one quick look at Malik and threw him back in the end zone. He did what he needed to do in that situation right there. But the situation would have been, what if something would have happened? What if Jaden Daniels fell in his drop back? What if he tripped? What if Neighbors caught it short of the goal line and the clock's running? Because you don't have that timeout, clock could have easily run out. So Brian Kelly addressed what the thought process was. It all worked out. I mean, you can say what you want about how LSU managed that time at the very end, but it did end up working out for LSU. Damian Ramos was able to kick the field goal to get LSU up late by 3. With about 8 seconds left. So you knew you did not want to give KJ Jefferson and that Arkansas Razorbacks offense, which has been clicking in the second half just like LSU, any more chances. So LSU got the ball last. It came down to whoever got the ball last with both those offenses and how they're clicking. And pretty much LSU got the ball last and gave little time for Arkansas to really do anything. But Brian Kelly, he kind of broke down what their thought process was in that last game situation.
Coach, going back to the end of the game, you talked about how you decided to handle the clock, but why run 3 plays there instead of taking a knee 3 times?
Well, we weren't going to score. So, in that situation, you could definitely make the case, and we talked about using our center play, which is to just slide the ball to the middle of the field with a direct snap and center the ball. That was certainly an option. We discussed it, but we felt more comfortable with the shotgun snap because that's what we do most of the time.
And those are all the LSU Brian Kelly quotes cut up from today. Appreciate Sean for the assist there and cutting up those clips. You can see Sean also doing a lot of stuff with us. The Gridiron Football hosts of Football Huddle 2. That's actually going to be on Friday, so make sure to check that out. That's going to be around noon. That will air. But yeah, anyway, that was a great game offensively for the LSU Tigers, and that's been really, 3 great offensive games in a row, and really 4, I wouldn't say great, obviously, for the Florida State game, but they moved the football. They outgained, they had over 300 yards of offense in the first half, so just being unable to convert on those plays in the red zone and being able to connect on some deep passing plays, that's kind of improved over the course of the season so far. So LSU's offense getting a little bit better. The running game is going. Logan Diggs has really stepped up to be that guy running the football. That's why you've seen kind of less of everybody else. You've seen a couple of times Josh Williams break out for some long runs, but really it's becoming more of a Logan Diggs show in the backfield. But LSU offensively, they can score with anybody. There's no doubt about that. They can match up with anybody in the country. They can score with anybody in the country. They're that good. Are they 19 good? No, but they're not far behind. This is a very good LSU offense and one of the best in the country. So they can score with anybody. The question is, moving forward, is how much will this defense improve? And we're going to kind of break down. It starts next week. Actually, this week, another rivalry game against Ole Miss. So the Magnolia Bowl trophy. So this is another big rivalry. This has always been a weird rivalry too. A lot of games coming down to the last second. Literally, for the older LSU fans out there, I know the Burt Jones game when LSU won the last second against Ole Miss, and I know a lot of Ole Miss fans were saying LSU ran 2 plays in 3 seconds or something like that. But I know that was a legendary game in that rivalry. But last year, LSU flexed their muscles. It was pretty much kind of like the theme of last year was LSU had a slow start. Ole Miss went up to a fast start. I think they were up 14-3 or 17-3. I remember that early last year, and then Jaden Daniels got going. That was in that 3-game stretch after the Florida game, had the Ole Miss game, the Bama game, where he was playing just as good as any quarterback in the country. He was doing things with his legs, with his arm. They got going. The defense really stiffened Ole Miss, and Jackson Dart couldn't really do anything. But Kai Wingo was pretty much unblockable that day. And as y'all can recall, LSU defeated Ole Miss. I believe that was the first really big win for Brian Kelly at LSU. And LSU was able to, the fans stormed the field after that game too. So I definitely remember that. It was a great day to be there for LSU. Now LSU's trying to win 2 in a row against the Ole Miss Rebels, against Lane Kiffin. The Rebels are coming off a loss to Alabama, and that was a game where it felt similar in some aspects as the LSU Ole Miss game last year, because Ole Miss got off to a great start against LSU last year, and Ole Miss did the same thing against Alabama. They scored, I believe, on their opening possession, went right down the field and scored. But Alabama's defense, they stiffened, and really they couldn't really do that much the rest of the game offensively. I don't think they even scored another touchdown after that in that game. So Alabama's defense still really good. We can still talk about what their quarterback situation is at Alabama, but defensively they're still a very strong football team, and you saw it. So 24-10, Ole Miss fell to Alabama last week. Jackson Dart had that touchdown run, 10-yard touchdown run, but besides that, it was Jalen Milroe had a decent performance. He managed the game. He did what they needed to do for Alabama to win. And Jackson Dart, they couldn't really get anything going in the running game. Quinshon Judkins only ran for 56 yards throughout the entire game. Jackson Dart was 20 for 35 for 244 and an interception. And yeah, that's just basically what it's been for Ole Miss this year. So Jackson Dart I mean, he's definitely improved. I mean, you look at the numbers from this year compared to last year, he's playing as like one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC. And I feel like that competition over the offseason, they brought in Shadur Sanders. Walker Howard came in from LSU to Ole Miss. They had a interesting quarterback battle, but Jackson Dart has improved so far in the year. Has completed 65 of 103 passes for just over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. He's also the leading rusher, which is a major surprise for Ole Miss right now. Because if you remember, Ole Miss had a freshman phenom at the running back position in Quinshon Judkins. Quinshon Judkins is one of the best players in the SEC. Just hasn't had the season that we thought he would have after having that spectacular freshman year. Judkins has averaged just about 3.5 yards per carry. So really the offensive line for Ole Miss has been a concern. I mean, Tulane was pushing him around a lot of times. Tulane was really the more physical team against Ole Miss, and you can look at the game, and that score was really misleading because Ole Miss put a couple of scores late, but it was a really close game, a one-touchdown game up to about 3 or 4 minutes left in that football game. So don't let that score deceive you. Tulane was right there at the very end of that. And the offensive line just so far has been struggling to opening up any holes and running the football. And if you're LSU, Lane Kiffin, he's going to try to run the football. I mean, that's what it is. You may think of Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin as throwing the football downfield every single play, taking deep shots every single play, have all this finesse offense that runs all these gadgets, all these trick plays, but at the same time, this is an Ole Miss offense that does want to run the football. They want to predicate their success on being able to run the football. So LSU, you just got to be aware of that. They have one of the top running backs in the country in Judkins. Hasn't come together just yet. They got some good receivers and Watkins and a former Como receiver, Trey Harris, too. So we have a couple former Como receivers. Shout out to the Spartans because Malik Neighbors started his high school career at Como, and now Trey Harris is at Ole Miss. And I believe he's leading them in touchdown catches, so with 5, and Watkins has 1. Defensively, Ole Miss this is basically their best defense since Lane Kiffin got there. So defensively, they've been very strong on the defense, and running defense has been really good. So this game, it's going to be a tricky one. I mean, it's going to be tough for LSU. It starts a stretch of back-to-back road games. LSU has to go on the road to play Ole Miss, and then after that, they have to go on the road after that to play Missouri. So it's going to be a tough stretch for LSU, but if you want to win the SEC, you want to contend for SEC championship, you're going to have to win games like that. And you got yourself a mulligan already with losing to Florida State. I don't think there's really much more margin of error as you have, but LSU has to start strong on the road. So with that, I'm going to go. I'm not going to get my prediction just yet. In order to read about my prediction of what the game is going to be, make sure to go to our website. GridironFootballUSA.com is the website, and then I'll have my game preview up tomorrow, up on Thursday. So I'll have my game preview more in depth about what's coming up with Ole Miss, the matchups, what both teams are like, strengths, weaknesses, all of that, everything that you need to know about LSU and Ole Miss. That will be on our website, GridironFootballUSA.com tomorrow. Now, guys, it's time. I know y'all been waiting for it. I appreciate y'all patience. I'm going to get to y'all questions. Or just statements in general. All right, so Brant wants to know, Jackson Dart, once again, very mobile quarterback like Jefferson. We struggle preventing rollout opportunities. What adjustments to personnel or defensive looks need to be made to counter that ability? That's a good question, Brant. So basically, it's what I've been talking about a lot throughout the show, and it's just being disciplined, staying on your man, not worried about what the other player is doing. Because, I mean, in my experience being around the game of football, you got to worry about doing your own job. I mean, the successful teams on the defense side of the football, everybody's doing their own job. I mean, we can talk about talent. It's one thing, but putting it together and making sure everybody's on the same page is another thing. So, especially in the secondary. If you're not on the same page, if you make one mistake, it can result, and especially in the SEC, it can result in big plays like that. So for LSU, they just need to not worry about, and this is going to be a good test for them because you're going to play against Ole Miss. They like to run a lot of different, some fluff in the backfield, right? A lot of motions, a lot of shifts, a lot of jet sweeps, a lot of RPOs, you name it. Lane Kiffin's going to try whatever he can to confuse the LSU secondary, just like what Arkansas did last Saturday. So if you're LSU, you got to be ready for that. So you're going to be ready for the gadget plays and all the other stuff that Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss offense wants to run, because they saw that on film that, hey, this is something we can do. We can confuse this LSU defense. So LSU, you just have to be disciplined. Do your job, whether it's a man, zone, whatever it is, do your job. And really looking back at it, LSU was there. You can say all you want about how bad it was defensively that night, but really first and second down, you're home, right? So it was really the third down. That's why I said the money down was pretty big. As far as personnel or defensive looks, really defensive looks, I like Matt House to be more aggressive. That's pretty much my only thing with House right now, because a lot of times on third down we're playing deep zone, and sometimes we're giving up the underneath pass and allows receivers to move and get yards after the catch and get that first down marker. So more exotic blitzes, and that's one of my things, my takeaways. You go live and die with your front seven. Live and die with your pressure. Your secondary hasn't been great. That your pass defense hasn't been great. So might as well take advantage of it. You know what you got, right? What you have is a great pass rush. You got a great defensive front. You have Harold Perkins, right? You have one of the most talented pass rushers in the country. You have Mason Smith. You have Mekhi Wingo. You have all these guys in the front seven. Use them. Go after the quarterback. Now, if you give up a 60-yard touchdown, one-on-one coverage, if it's kind of like the situation with the Florida State game where a receiver gets them off, so be it. But at the same time, when you attack, it's a high risk, high reward, right? You could be an opportunistic defense, and I think that's what this LSU defense can excel at. So just being more aggressive is what I have to say about it. If that answers your question, Brant, basically LSU just needs to be more aggressive on the defense. LSU's aggressive on the offense, and that's really helped them. They're attacking downfield, they're throwing downfield. Have that same type of mentality on defense. Trust your players, trust your personnel, trust your strengths, and see what you have. For Cameron, Kiffin is good at scripting the first drive or two of a game. What does LSU need to do on defense to not get down dirt early in the game? So, Cameron, I think you pretty much read into one of my keys to the game for LSU, and that is weathering the storm. Right? You're on the road. It's going to be a hostile environment at Ole Miss. And like you said, and I definitely agree with this, Lane Kiffin's an excellent play caller. He's an excellent offensive coach. He's good at scripting the first drive or two of a game. He is. You look at last year. Ole Miss went right down the field and scored twice. I believe it was their first two drives against LSU. So if you're LSU, I would just mix it up. It's basically the same question, same response I had to Brant's question. I would just mix it up, give them different looks. If you're Matt House, be aggressive, hit Jackson Dart early, get him uncomfortable. They don't have a great offensive line. It's kind of the situation with Mississippi State. Mississippi State's offensive line was struggling. So was Arkansas. So their offensive line has been a struggle, and they've actually struggled against Tulane. So get in Jackson Dart's face, come up with pressure in all different angles, just mix it up, give Dart different looks, confuse them, and you just throw them off. Throw them off their game plan, throw them off their rhythm, and really a great game plan. Everybody has what's the quote pretty much? Everybody has a great game plan to get punched in the mouth. That's it. Be the aggressor, punch him in the mouth, that's what you do against finesse offenses. That's what you do. You be physical with receivers, be physical up front, and just affect the game that way. That's what you have to do. Okay, let's see. Get to your questions. Okay, Monjonius says this is the game for LSU's defensive line to prove themselves. Let's go. Yeah, I agree with you, and that's what I've been saying. LSU's defensive line, we talked about and praised about it all offseason long, about how this defensive line can be like some of the other past dominant LSU defensive lines that we've seen in the past years. I mean, go back to the mid-2010s with the 2011 LSU defensive line. You had the 2007 LSU defensive line, those defensive lines, right? But the talent is there, right? I mean, Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, Jordan Jefferson. I got to say, Jordan Jefferson has been outstanding. Every time he's been in the football game, he has been pretty tough to block. And I would love to see what it would look like if they put Jordan Jefferson and Mekhi Wingo on the inside together and experiment a little bit. Mason Smith on the outside, defensive end. I mean, Mason Smith is a versatile player. He can play inside, the 3-tech, the 5-tech. He's a versatile player. So line them all over the defensive line. Let's see what you got. And then see what you can. I mean, that would be a welcoming sight for an offensive tackle, right? See a 300-pound defensive tackle, Mason Smith, rush the edge, because he's played some defensive end before. So they can be flexible in that. This defensive line, this is definitely a proven game. And really, the defensive line, they create good push, great pass rush against Arkansas. We know about Mississippi State. That was their best game by far. But this is pretty much a good measuring stick. Because I think you get a little bit of a mix between Mississippi State and Ole Miss in that regard. I mean, in Arkansas in that regard. Because Jackson Dart, he's a tough quarterback to bring down. He's a big, physical quarterback that can run. He's not as big as KJ Jefferson is, but, I mean, he's a tough quarterback to bring down. So when you get there, if you're LSU, one thing is to get there, and I think LSU can get there in the backfield. They can create pass rush. Another thing is to finish the play. That's what LSU's defensive line needs to do. They need to finish getting these quarterbacks to the ground. It's one thing to get there. It's another thing to actually finish on those plays, and that'll be a good test for LSU. That's my main thing. But I think this LSU defensive line, this can be a perfect game for them. They can probably win this game with this defensive line. I like that matchup against Ole Miss's offensive front. Now, can they contain Jackson Dart and prevent him from making big plays with his legs? That's going to be a really big key to how LSU's defense can be successful against Ole Miss's offense. And Jason, I don't think Jason Hughes is a big Lane Kiffin fan, so he's got a couple comments here. So Jason, Lane Kiffin, he sucks as a coach in the SEC. Was Lane Kiffin's record for Ole Miss versus teams in the top 20? I don't have that stat offhand. I can try to look it up, Jason. But I don't think it's been really good. What I would say. And Alabama, he struggled against Alabama against his former predecessor, his mentor, right, Nick Saban. So he hasn't beat them yet. There's been some more assistants that were able to get the better end of Nick Saban, the greatest college football coach of all time. I mean, you saw the last couple of years, Jimbo Fisher was able to beat him once. Kirby Smart was able to beat him twice. You saw Steve Sarkisian. He just beat him this year. So everybody, a lot of people had Lane Kiffin as the first guy to beat him. If you can recall, maybe that his first year at Ole Miss, that was that 2020 year where Alabama was pretty much unbeatable that year. Well, their closest game that year was Ole Miss. Ole Miss was matching tick for tat, in that football game. And even though it came up just short, you thought, oh, okay, Lane Kiffin, I mean, he's going to beat Alabama. He's going to be the first guy to do it. And so far, we haven't really seen that yet. So that's interesting. But, yeah, he hasn't been – I mean, overall, his record is 88-48 overall. But, yeah, I don't think he's been that great against teams in the AP poll. I think I got it here. 4-23. So that's your answer, Jason. So Lane Kiffin is 4-23 in the AP top 25 against teams in the AP that finished in the AP top 25 poll. So yeah, not a great record for Lane Kiffin, and this is a big opportunity for Lane. Last year, first half, everything was going really great for Ole Miss, but the second half, LSU just pretty much flexed their muscles on them and really bullied them in the second half and dominated them in the second half. So we'll see how far Ole Miss has in that regard, has improved in that regard. I feel like their defense is getting better. This is their best defense that he's had since his first year at Ole Miss. So we'll get to see. Really, the biggest key in my book in this game between LSU and Ole Miss is third down. That's going to be a big key in this game. Whoever team is better, because both offenses can move the football, but what defense does a better job of getting off the field, at least forcing threes instead of sevens? That is going to come down to that, I think, in this type of football game. We got two of the better offenses in the league and two of the better quarterbacks in the league, and Daniels and Dart. So should be a very entertaining game between LSU and Ole Miss. Hopefully LSU gets on the right end of that one. We'll have more about that coming up. Okay, what about at home? Let's see. I don't think it's been that really good either, Jason. It hasn't been good at home for him against top 25 teams. If he's 4-23 heading into this year. Now I guess 5-23 if you think about it, because they did beat Tulane. Tulane was a top 25 team, and then they lost to Alabama. So 5-24 is overall against teams in the top 25. Well, guys. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all for coming in and interacting with me as well. Got some really good comments. Appreciate Jason, Mongonius, Cameron, and Brant for your input today. And that's what we want. We want y'all to be involved on the show here today. We want your thoughts on the previous LSU game and just thoughts on looking ahead to the next LSU game. That's what you want to see. So a lot of really good stuff there. I'm going to check to see if there's anything, if anybody tweeted a question too that I might have not seen, because I didn't want to leave anybody out. No, I think that's good. I think that's all the questions. And you're welcome, Jason. I appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. And, yeah, please like and subscribe. And we love for y'all to get involved. We appreciate y'all input with guys like Jason and Cameron and Brant. That's what makes the show go. So I can't do that without y'all. So, yeah, please like, share. Make sure to go to visit our website, gridironfootballusa.com. I'm going to have a more in-depth preview of Ole Miss, and I'll give you my prediction, my score prediction, my preview, all of that, and what you should expect from this game, the Magnolia Bowl. And then, obviously, Saturday, I'll cover the game. I'll have a write-up about the game, but I'll tweet during the game, too. So keep up to date with everything going on, gridironfootballusa.com. I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in there today. Hopefully y'all enjoyed another episode of The Chase with Jace. Next week, we'll recap, hopefully, an LSU win over Ole Miss. We'll look ahead at another road game. So LSU bound through some adversity right here, as they had to go back-to-back games on the road. And in Missouri right now, they're undefeated. I believe they got Vanderbilt this week, so they can head into that game against an undefeated Missouri team. So things are going to be really interesting as we're starting to really get a feel of the SEC slate right now and in the swing of things. So appreciate y'all guys. I'm going to wrap up. Y'all have yourself a good weekend. We'll see y'all next week on The Chase with Jace. Enjoy y'all football weekend.